Saddle hunters, our brothers over at Tethered continue to kill the game by releasing innovative products. They just recently put out the Eberhard Series saddle. They also put out the Menace saddle, which is for our Husky brothers and sisters that are into saddle hunting. That saddle will do just maybe a little bit better job of cupping your quote unquote assets. But the thing that I'm most excited about is their recent release of the Tethered One climbing stick. This thing is crazy light, crazy strong, and crazy quiet. I'm just going to cut to the chase here and give you some specs. Each stick weighs in at less than 1 pound. That includes your Dynalite rope attachment. A 3-pack of these will weigh in at 2.7 pounds, which is ridiculously light. It's a 17-inch step-to-step single stick height, and there's an 8.5-inch step footbed, which gives you plenty of room for those of us folks with bigger feet. It's all made with aerospace grade titanium and aluminum for construction. So if you'd like to learn more about Tether's innovative products, head over to tetherednation.com and check them out. This podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. Skull Brew Coffee roasts premium single origin coffee, guaranteeing to deliver the freshest coffee directly to your doorstep. The kicker, they're 2% for conservation certified and donate 10% of their proceeds back to organizations who support the interests of our hunting community. So go to skullbrewcoffee.com and pick up one of their 3-killer roasts and fuel your hunt and fill more tags with Skull Brew Coffee. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 204. Today, we're coming to you live from the Rut Wagon for one final time for our Rut Recap. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. I am back from my rut vacation with no field tags, which is unfortunate. You know, if you listen to the previous podcast, and I'll touch on it just a little bit in this one. Missouri was a rad trip, really cool. Had some opportunities, just could not seal the deal. Ended up hitting one that got away. I talked about that, I think, in episode 203, if I'm not mistaken. I think I touch on it just a little bit in this session, but I'm not going to belabor this up front. I actually just wanted to make a really quick mention to let you guys know that Skull Brew Coffee Company has a new product that is out that you might want to try checking out. I'm kind of a coffee nut, obviously, and when I travel to do these hunts, a lot of times I'm looking for ways to have a good cup of coffee in the morning before I head out to hunt. A lot of times I've had to kind of settle for that instant crap that tastes like garbage and typically will mess up your stomach after about 2 weeks of drinking that stuff. So what I did was did some investigating and tried to find a way that I could package this up, some Skull Brew up, into a convenient kind of way that you could use to travel, you know, whether it's to the in-laws who have shitty coffee or whether you are headed out to the timber on a hunting trip, hiking trip, camping, scouting, whatever the case is. So we have now released the Backcountry Pack, which is essentially a small pour-over pack that comes in single-serve packets that you can use. All you need to do is boil some water, get some hot water, whether you use a jet boil, a pot, over a propane fire, whatever the case is, and pour through this filter into your cup, and you have ready-made kick-ass Skull Brew coffee, pour-over style, anywhere you want to go. So be sure to check that out. Head to skullbrewcoffee.com and check out that new product. Now, for today's show, we are chatting with my buddy Chad and Cameron. Here, the second state that we're in, undisclosed state. My buddies from Exodus Trail Cameras are hanging out with me. We did a couple of days of hunting here, and we're just kind of really recapping, you know, what we had going on during our rut. You know, Chad and I really kind of thinking back on the Missouri trip or the Missouri hunt, plus the state that we're in presently and where we're hunting, and really kind of start talking a little bit about strategically the differences between the places that we've hunted this past rut and how they were all kind of different. And we kind of, Missouri was really one approach because it was all brand new to us. A lot of scouting, boots on the ground, pounding the pavement, trying to find hot sign and hunting it, to, you know, the state that we're in as we're recording this, which is a place that we've had some history with. And we've had the opportunity to run a fair amount of trail cameras and get some data over the course of a few seasons. And really, the way this place hunts, it's, you know, you're not, if you're going to go out and just try to hunt hot sign and find hot sign, you may end up walking for a week and never find the thing that you're looking for necessarily to set up on. So we talk a little bit about how those, how both of those styles are different and how we needed to approach each of those hunts. Sometimes the pros and cons of each, what we like about each, what we dislike about each. And then the difference just in like your attitude and your approach that you have to have outside of like the strategies and tactics that you might deploy. Really just about the mental aspect of it and preparing yourself for each style of hunting that we had to do during the course of this trip. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the podcast. As always, I want to thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I am in the rut wagon still. It feels like I've been in this thing for like a year. It's been the longest 15 days or whatever it's been. Joined tonight by my esteemed colleagues, the senator and representative from the great state of Ohio, Mr. Chad Sylvester.
I don't know if I'm esteemed, but I'm something, I guess.
Yeah. And then hailing from, well, you kind of split the line, don't you?
Yeah.
You're part Buckeye, part Keystone.
Yep.
You're a Keystone Buckeye, kind of.
Yeah, that's fair.
Are you a Steeler fan or are you a Browns fan?
Neither.
Yeah. What are you?
Carolina Panthers.
How the hell did that happen?
I don't know. I like the color.
You like the color? Okay. There you go. Mr. Cameron, the cameraman, is with us as well. We are in this undisclosed location. So this is the second state of this Midwestern trip. Chad and I were in Missouri for whatever it was, 7 days, and I kind of recapped like my mishaps with that trip. And then we bolted across the Midwest to an undisclosed location to another state, and have been hunting ever since the weather broke. We had some gnarly temperatures, as most of the Midwest did there earlier in the week. Waited for the weather to break, and this is a place we had some intel about some good deer. Trying to get on the good deer, and well, we'll just let this podcast kind of play out, and you'll see where that landed. So, Chad, I guess just you kick us off, man. We haven't heard about your Missouri trip yet, because I did a recap for mine, just kind of what happened, what went down with the deer I hit that I lost and whatever. But I did make mention, I think, that you had released an arrow, but just want to get the play-by-play from you.
Yeah, so probably a lot like your recap of that trip. My side was pretty similar. A lot of scouting, a lot of hunting, a lot of pressure, and we're in deer, just not the deer that I wanted to see. Likewise with you. So when we finally got to that last piece, we were in them pretty quick. I had bumped a pretty good one, maybe 30 minutes after you guys had dropped me off, working the cove of that lake, and that deer was 160 plus. So immediately, I was like, all right, well, they're in here. These are the type of deer I want to hunt. This piece is worth some time, And at that point, that was Friday afternoon, so I think we only had, a day and a half or 2 days. But
I think it was 2 full days, if I'm remembering correctly.
I bumped that deer Friday afternoon, and I hunted Friday night, Saturday morning, or all day Saturday, and then I Sunday sit before we pulled out, before we wheeled out.
Yeah.
But when I bumped that deer, he was with a doe, and I thought that I could just circle downwind and get set up. And, there was an old railroad, or not an old railroad, but a railroad bed or railroad track not very far from where I bumped that deer. So I immediately jumped out on those tracks and hustled downwind and basically just tried to circle around and get set up. And there was a cedar thicket bottom that had some good, just a nice transition out to some private ag. And that's where I ended up setting up. So that night, if there was not much time left, I never caught back up with that big deer again, but there was, I seen a buck come out of bedding and work that transition out towards those private ag fields. And he ended up, I seen him from a long ways away. I was fidgeting with cameras and, trying to find him in the viewfinder or whatever. But that deer came in, and I had ranged some trees when I first got set up in there, and I seen where he was headed, and I knew that I had ranged a cedar there that was 30 yards. So I thought, okay, he's gonna either walk in front of that tree, and I'm just gonna hold low, or he's gonna go behind that tree, and I'm gonna hold high. So
using single pin,
yeah. But I had enough time to dial my pin to 30 yards. I mean, the whole thing lasted probably 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, it was I had plenty of time. So as he was coming, he got in behind some brush. I drew nice and clean, super patient. He comes out into the opening. I, bleat at him, stops. I let one go. Good shot, clean shot. Shot underneath his belly. And he had no idea what had happened. So I'm trying to get another arrow knocked. And I give him a snort wheeze, and he's just kind of like looking around like, where the hell, like, where's this deer at? Like, what the heck's going on? After the first snort wheeze, he took a couple steps and kind of hard quartering away from me, possibly like 180, like his butt's facing me. So I snort wheezed at him again, and then he started flicking his tail, and he's looking around. He still doesn't know what the heck happened. And then I hit him with a grunt. And then at that point, he was like, all right, because he had stood there for probably 30 or 45 seconds.
Right.
And then after that grunt, he was finally like, okay, something's not right, and hopped up over the railroad bed out towards those fields. But when I went down to get my arrow, it was too dark to actually go back and range the tree that I was in. So I went back to that set that morning and ranged where he was, and it was 42 and a half yards.
Oh, wow.
So it was a poke.
Right.
Cameron's over there laughing because he knows how I am with judging
with
yardage. Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. He's like, oh yeah, it's like 20 yards away, and I'm like, man, that's like 50 yards. Like, I'm like, I don't know if it's because you have such long strides when you walk, because you'll be like, yeah, that go down to that bench, or go down to that saddle, and there'll be a scrape there, and you're like, oh yeah, it's only like a couple hundred, like 200 yards. I'm like, I end up looking at my tracker, and I'm like, man, that was a half mile. You know what I mean? It's like,
you're talking about the set this morning.
Yeah, well, the one I went to this afternoon or whatever. It's like, I mean, you said it was a couple hundred. It wasn't much more. I mean, it was like 0.4 of a mile or something like that. Yeah. So it's not like the other place I was, hunting the past 2 days or whatever. That was a gnarly hike. But then you ended up seeing that deer again, right? The following day, I think.
So the following, so I went back to that set Saturday morning, and was still in deer. Had several does come through that morning. Had a single doe come past my setup at like 10 yards at like 8:30 in the morning. I'm like, all right, well, this is perfect, There's actually a buck there in the morning, and I just couldn't. It was so dark. It was before first light. All I could see. I mean, he was almost directly under my tree. I got to spit on him. I could see it was like make out where his beams, because it was so dark. I couldn't tell what he had for G1s, G2s, or whatever. But so anyways, that doe came through at 8:30, and I thought I was in the money, and that was the last deer I saw. And then finally, later in the afternoon, it was probably 2, 3 o'clock. I just thought, that buck wasn't too shook up last night. There's a good chance he's going to do the same thing tonight. So I was looking at where I could get set up to get within 30 yards, and there's like down in that cedar bottom, that cedar thicket, there weren't any trees to get in. So I hopped down and found the trail that he was using. It was just basically like a little, a real barely noticeable ditch down in that bottom that he was following. So I just tucked in behind a cedar tree, just broke some branches and tucked in there, and actually had a camera and stuff set up on a tree next to me. And that was like within 25 yards of where that little ditch was that he was using. So later in the afternoon, it's rolling on, and now it's like 30 minutes of shooting time left, and I'm like, all right, well, this ain't gonna happen, And just real faintly, I hear a grunt, and it was like just quiet enough. I was like, wait, did I hear that right? Was that a grunt? Then I heard it again. I was like, oh, it was a grunt, but I didn't hear any running or chasing or anything. And then I look up on the far edge of that thicket, which is like 50 couple yards probably. Out pops a doe, like, and her tail's up, and like she's running. She runs around this little island of trees, and I'm like, oh crap! So I grab my bow, turn the GoPro on. I didn't have time to turn the other camera on. And then that same buck was out between 2 cedar trees, like looking for that doe because she had ran around the island. So I snort wheeze at him, and his head snaps around. Boom, just pegs me. I'm at full draw. He's head on staring at me, and he's 50 couple yards or whatever. And so I'm at full draw for like 30 seconds. Now he's wondering, because I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. Neither one of us know what the doe's doing. So he's like looking at me, looking around for the doe, looking at me, looking around for the doe. Finally, he just takes one bound behind that island of cedar trees. I let my bow down and try to get a visual on like what the heck's happening. Never seen or heard those deer again. I have no idea what happened.
Just
to them.
vanished.
Wow.
Like thin air. Like boom, gone.
That place is crazy. I mean, for those out there listening, I mentioned it in the last kind of recap podcast. We jumped around to 3 different pieces of public while we were in Missouri, just trying to find good deer, trying to get into deer, because this was a completely freelance hunt. Chad, neither of us had been to Missouri to scout or do anything. Our buddy Zach is from Missouri that was with us, but he wasn't from that area of Missouri. He was several hours, away from where he lived, so he'd never even heard of those places that we had been to. And it's just kind of it's kind of crazy just to kind of land on a spot, and then go try to figure it out. And all the places we got into deer relatively quickly, but this place here in particular was kind of like a little honey hole where it's like we immediately found, because I'd mentioned in the previous episode that I did, I about got run over by a 150-inch deer that was chasing a doe. You know what I mean? It was like, and that was the same day, within 10 minutes of when you bump that, 160.
Yeah.
And so within the first 30 minutes of us being on this particular piece of public, we had encounters with 2 giant bucks.
Yeah.
And
if I would have been on my game, I had just got dropped off and was scouting to a pin that I had dropped and immediately got into some sign. If I would have been on my game, I maybe could have had a chance to shoot that deer.
Really?
Well, when I was walking around that transition, found a bunch of rubs, went to an acorn flat, bunch of rubs there. Then I went through a little knoll that wasn't really a ridge, but like a little hill.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was a cedar thicket, like a bunch of warm season grasses and just isolated cedars in there. The sign wasn't very good there, but there was a hard trail that went kind of over the top of it. And as it went over the top, it went into some hardwoods. And as soon as I dropped over that, I seen a ladder stand. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, who in the hell's carrying a ladder stand back here? Like, we just left these other pieces that were pounded pretty good.
People, yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, why
Not
me?
again.
Why does this always happen to me? And then that's when I seen that doe stand up. And, she boogered out of there, and then he got up right after. So if I would have been paying more attention and had an arrow knocked, like I should have, it was November 5th or 6th, 7th.
Right.
I don't know what day that was.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I did a fair amount of. Oh, I'll say a fair amount because it's more than I usually do it. Walking through that particular piece, just because of the way it laid out, because you would be walking through hardwood, then you would hit a cedar thicket, and then all of a sudden, boom, you would pop out the other side of the cedar thicket, and you'd be in like this warm season grasses, CRP kind of set up with a cedar thicket on the opposite side of you. And so I did a fair amount of walking around with an arrow knocked because of that, because you could see, you know what I mean? And you could just walk out into the open, and there could be a buck chasing a doe or whatever the case was, because when I saw that big deer and about got run over, Zach and I were looking at the map, and we were like, and I'll give credit to Zach here, because we were kind of scouting this direction anyway. We're trying to make it over like to this far back corner. We wanted to go all the way to like the end of like where the property line stopped on this side. There was a body of water that we were kind of around, and we were trying to make it all the way to the end where the public stopped. And Zach we're looking at the map, and he looks at me. He's like, if I'm a buck, I'm a big buck. He's like, and I'm trying to cut out a doe, and I'm going to breed her. He's like, I would take her right here. And I was like, well, let's walk over there. And so we ended up walking over there, and sure enough, that buck was with that doe right there in that spot. We had him at like 40 yards, just neither, probably 40-ish yards, and just neither of us saw them. We had the wind in our face where it's like if we just would have seen them, we may have been able to make a play because we had that tall ass grass in between. It was just like this little cove of hardwoods that popped out like this little finger into like this CRP kind of grass or whatever. And super tall grass. It was probably about chest high. It would have been really easy to kind of sink down in and kind of try to stalk your way up with the wind in your face. It would have been a cool setup, but neither of us saw them in time. Like we saw them about the same time they saw us, and they were gone, and that was it. But man, that place is like, I would have stayed an extra couple of days because I know you and Zach had to take off, but the weather was just going to be garbage, and it didn't make any. I mean, it was going to be. But I mean, in hindsight, maybe I should have stayed because I mean, the weather was garbage when we were there, and we were still running into deer every day.
Yeah,
at least the mornings.
I thought you were crazy for leaving. Because you guys were in deer. You had shot one. Chad missed one. I would have definitely, like, if you didn't have anywhere else to be, I would have definitely stayed there, especially over coming here.
Yeah. So
it's just tough when it's the temps are in like high 70s, low 80s, maybe one day. It's just, I mean, it was like that across the Midwest for everybody, so it doesn't do any good, to complain about it.
Yeah.
But it starts to wear on your psyche a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's having good weather definitely makes it a lot easier to, get up day after day, especially on these types of trips, where it's like, I think I said at the beginning, this is like day 15 or whatever it is for me, living in a tiny trailer, not showering, but every like 3 or 4 days at best. You know what I mean? You're looking for any little thing that you can grab a hold of that gives you the gumption to get up the next morning and kind of keep going and stuff like that. 'Cause I make no bones about. I'm not one of these guys that says I could hunt for 6 months straight every day all day. I'm a realist. It's like I've seen my max. My max is about 15 days.
Yeah.
Of getting after it every day, and then it's like I need to hit the reset button and have like a normal life and take a real shower.
Yeah.
And use real shampoo that smells like something, or something. But I mean, Cameron, there was a moment whenever I was leaving where I was like, man, I should just stay like 2 more days. I was like, because the deer hunting there is phenomenal. Like, we found a little spot where it gets gun hunted. We know that. We talked to some locals. We know it gets pounded pretty hard like during gun season, but nobody really bow hunts it.
Yeah, it seemed pretty special. And I was just thinking, like, the weather sucks there, and it's going to suck here, too. And coming here, like, you just need everything to work in your favor to have a good hunt here. And we were going to get weather that break just a couple days later, so just keep those next 2 days when you're on deer. Even though the weather's not ideal, it's not going to be ideal here either.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing about that spot in Missouri, too, was, like, I mean, I know, Chad, you were walking into that one spot, but, like, some of the spots that Zach and I found was you could get there if you wanted to walk, but it was going to be a haul. It was like water access there, and him with his boat.
And you were going to be by yourself.
Yeah, I wasn't going to have a boat. I was going to be completely. I mean, which is fine. I don't mind. I mean, I was by myself while I was in Iowa last year, so it's not a big deal. But it was just more thinking about like, how many of the spots can I really get to that I want to get to if I don't have a boat?
That's fair.
And the drag, not that the drag would, I would just pack it out, quarter it up and pack it out. Actually, Zach was telling us that they actually prefer that in Missouri for disease reasons. They prefer for you to just leave the carcass in a timber and pack out is what they prefer, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, so that was the end of the Missouri trip. I already kind of gave my synopsis for what happened to me. But definitely a state, that I will be going back to. The cool thing was we met some great locals. We met some, Zach and I met a guy from Florida, super good dude, had been hunting there before, which was odd because it was not a ton of people there. He said there was like, I haven't seen pressure like this in a while. And we were like, man, if this is pressure, like, I'm not sure what you mean because you're the only person I've seen, Zach and I did see a father-son duo pull 2 hammers out. They were boating in behind us the morning that I shot mine. And the kid killed his first archery buck. It was probably like a mid-140s 10-point.
Wow.
It was a hammer. Yeah, and they were actually right over where we were at, like not far from where we were hunting. And his dad killed a nice 10 points, probably like 125 inches or something like that. It was a good buck.
Sounds like they're stacked in there.
They are. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's just the right habitat, I think. I just think they have such diversity and such small, like, little pockets and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to think about that. I really couldn't put my finger on why, like, the deer activity in that general area was so good. It's super, super thick. Like, all of it's just gnarly thick. It's around a body of water. So it's like that. You get a lot. Well, I think, too, it's like when you get around water, it's like you get a ton of diversity and you get really, like, significant, like, edge transitions and stuff like that whenever you're
the movement
around
is so defined.
Yeah. And so it does make it a little, I won't say easier, but like if you're starting from ground zero, it's like you have some pretty definitive places you can start looking.
Yeah.
To be able to tell pretty quickly whether or not there's deer there or not, And I think that was partly what we were running into in some of that stuff we were hunting previously. It was just like, the second piece in particular, it was hard to find. Like, we just weren't finding a lot of sign even, That's the one thing. Like, I didn't see a lot of scrapes. Did you see a lot of scrapes in Missouri? Like, that kind of blew my mind. Like, I expected to see just like some hammer scrapes like I'd seen in Iowa, but I didn't see hardly any.
I didn't come across any primary community scrapes, but down in those creek bottoms, there were a handful. There was in the one area I did come across one, which it was in a transition from a creek bottom kind of out to one of the bean fields that was on the conservation land. And then on that same piece, but a different area, the day that I walked like 5 or 6 miles, I got down into a bottom that had a bunch of drainages kind of coming down into that creek and kind of opening up into kind of like draws, I guess. They were bigger drainages. And I cut a couple scrape lines there where there was just, scrape after scrape after scrape, just kind of edge or territory scrapes down those bottoms, which when I walked past all that, there were rubs and stuff down there too, but nothing of any size. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is all night sign.
Right. Yeah. I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, most of the stuff I had found was one big hammer rub in that first piece we were on that had a scrape right next to it. That was super fresh. Like, I like that. And then we found that scrape line where Zach and I had that encounter with those couple shooters in that first piece. The second piece, though, I found 1 or 2 in the timber, but they weren't like very big. Like, they didn't look like they were really getting hammered. I kind of thought the same thing. It was like nighttime, activity. And then just some like really obvious like logging roads or whatever, like a scrape line that, again, obvious, nighttime activity predominantly. So that was the thing that kind of threw me for a loop, because I was like, all right, find the hot scrapes. Let's set up on those. But I was finding more fresh rubs, than I was anything, which is interesting. But so now that brings us to the undisclosed location where we are currently. It's a love-hate relationship, I think, for all three of us.
There's no love here.
No, Cameron's not even going to try to pretend. It's all hate for him. But I don't. This is like, I've hunted this piece before. I've scouted it, before with my buddies here. It's just a hard place to hunt, man. It's I can't really explain it any other way. I've never seen the caliber of deer ever anywhere else that I've ever hunted. That's including Iowa. Just the number of big deer that you can find on camera, or using a camera, right? Verifying that you have world-class animals. But the terrain is so vast, so steep, so thick, and just rugged and hard to get into places. And the deer density is just low, and it's really for me it's a test. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started podcasting. It's a little bit of a test because I like to. So when we were in Missouri, for example, Chad, like you and I, like that, we were loving that because it was freelance hunting. So it required us to move and scout and find sign and find where we're going to set up, which we both really like, right? We both like to hunt. It's like you're not waiting for deer. It's like you're hunting the deer, right? This place, it's like, and it's really kind of like a juxtaposition to do it all in one trip, because you go from like super aggressive, gonna go find deer, bump deer, know where they're at, and then I'm gonna set up on them or whatever, to playing the long game of like, I have 3 to 4 years of trail camera data, and this buck should be hitting these scrapes or these, cruising areas or scrapes or wherever the camera was placed within this 4-day window. And you just need to be there those 4 days, all day,
Dark to dark.
dark to dark, and you'll likely get an opportunity.
Yep.
And it's just, and that of course, like, weather has to line up for you, because it might throw off the days by a couple days or whatever. So there's some things in there, but it's like when you have 3 to 4 years worth of data that says this deer shows up between the 11th and the 17th of November, like clockwork, 2 times in that week, he will show up at daylight in this spot.
Yep.
Right. And it's just going from like that grind it out, get after it, to like, just, I'm going to go now, just sit all day. I'm going to be honest, it was tough for me to kind of make the shift.
This is much more mentally challenging, and really test your discipline and your faith in the process.
Yeah.
More than any place I've ever hunted. And I maybe mentioned this to you, Clint, or maybe it was Cameron, but I really feel like this is one of the hardest places to hunt, with the exception of the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so similar to the Northeast.
It is very similar to the Northeast. Yeah.
Big woods.
Low deer numbers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Such long movements.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference would be that the deer here, you can find world-class deer.
Yeah.
That's the that to me is like really the only difference.
Well, that's the only reason we're
And
here.
weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weather, I mean, they have, obviously they'll get snow, and you could do some tracking and stuff like that up there. Over here, it's like you're not gonna do any of that.
No, there's no snow here.
But yeah, I mean, I'll just go for my sits. I got here earlier, because I left Missouri. Chad had to head home for a couple of days to take care of some business. And I ended up, the first night I was here, I didn't really do anything. Set up camp. The second day I was here, I went out. I hunted somewhere in the morning, and I don't even remember where it was at. In the
ground scrape.
No, that was the evening.
Oh.
I hunted somewhere in the
Oh,
morning.
the saddle.
Oh, yeah. Hunted that saddle and checked all the cameras. That's right. And there was a new cut that had gotten done. We scouted this in the spring,
It's February.
Yeah, like February. And they hadn't cut it yet.
Right.
And we went through and scouted it, and we were like, oh, okay, this seems like a good piece. Well, then Chad and Cameron came back to hang cameras over the summer at some point, right? I think it was
July.
Yeah.
July. And they had done a cut all around that. So we all kind of got excited. We were like, sweet, let's put some cameras up on this, see what's shaking. It may not be a player per se this year, but the next several years it should be a player. And we actually ended up getting a couple decent deer, like younger deer, and then one of the, S-Ben made his appearance, which that guy shows up like everywhere. I'm like, I think he just likes to party, because it's like every ridge, it's like he ends up being on camera on like every single stinking ridge.
That's surprising because he's so old.
He is. That deer's, I hunted that deer specifically in 16 and 17, and he was 4 and 5 then. So.
And what did he go when he was that age? I forget.
He was a clean, typical 10, around 170 inches, probably something. Maybe low 60s, maybe in the mid 70s, somewhere in there. Just clean, typical giant frame deer.
He's a big deer, and now he's probably goes
high 40s, probably.
Right? Yeah. I mean, he's old as shit.
He still had a good frame on him last year.
Yeah, he did.
Last year he was
This year
in the
he
60s last year.
This year he went downhill pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
But he's probably 8 at this point.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he showed up on that over there. So I went around and checked all those cameras, and then that evening I hunted a ground setup where we had a new player show up just whatever it was 2 weeks ago. That Big 10.
just a couple days ago.
We were in Missouri when that happened, the 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a hammer.
Because he was over in that same area that I'm hunting.
He's probably 160-ish.
Yeah, he's in 60s.
Yeah.
The flyer off his G2.
Yep. Big deer. And So I went and hunted that the scrape from the ground. It was a good sit. It was warm though. It was like 80. That was the day that was 80 degrees. So it was just a miserable hunt. And then I don't remember what I did the following day, but then the real reason why, I guess why I kind of showed up here, why I came to this particular spot is because there is a spot that Chad had hunted in the past. Another buddy of ours had hunted the general area in the past. I actually arrowed a big deer in that spot and lost it. And it's just a gnarly hike in, and there's these two benches that come together. It's like this perfect little spot to intersect to kind of run these ridges. And there's a typical 10 from the past like 2 years or whatever that has been hitting this spot. Last year we had him in daylight a couple times right around this time frame.
The 11th.
Yep.
Yeah, around the 11th. Yeah. And then he'll show up. Yeah, you usually show up like twice between like the 11th and like the 17th or something like that. And he'll hit it again up until like late or mid-December, I think it was, if I'm remembering this.
December
17th. 13th or 17th. Yeah.
So he'll basically make 2 rounds, and he's hit this scrape that's there and another scrape that's further out the ridge in October a couple times. And he was a good deer last year, and he put on some significant length this year. Couldn't really tell because with the pictures like of his mass, but he had a lot of mass last year.
Yeah, he was thick.
What's that?
He was thick.
Yeah. I don't know what he would score this year. I would say he's probably pretty close to Boone and Crockett. If he's not Boone and Crockett, would be my guess. But that's why I was coming here, was to hunt that particular deer, because I really felt like, would have an opportunity if I was able to sit for a couple days straight at this particular spot. And if the wind was going to be good to me, I should get an opportunity. So I sat it. This is one of those places where it's like you may go days and not see a single deer. Yep. And then you will be sitting, and then all of a sudden a giant will show up. And that's kind of just the way this place hunts. And so I was down there for 2 days, didn't see anything. Got in there this morning. Actually ended up having a doe below. I couldn't see her. There was no way she winded me. I was in my tree for 10 minutes, and my wind was good. And I couldn't figure out why she was blowing. I thought maybe, a coyote or something bumped her or something like that. I wasn't sure what it was. And then, daylight kind of breaks. It's like maybe 10 minutes later after that doe blows and kind of like bounces off. And then all of a sudden I hear like the loudest grunt I've ever heard in my life. And at first it was one of those types of grunts. It's like, it's so loud where you think that it's a person, because you're like, that can't be a deer, And so I waited for a few minutes, and then he hit again, and now he was in a different part of the ridge. And I was like, okay, for one, no human can make that move that fast on this terrain to get from that spot to that spot that quickly, and without me hearing him do it, So then at that point, I knew it was a deer. I called back to it. I tried to bring it in. It didn't want to play. My guess was that buck was over there messing with that doe. She blew, got out of there. He stuck around. He didn't want to play the reindeer games. So then I was actually pulling my stuff and getting out of that spot, headed to another spot for this evening. And when I got out, I actually ended up jumping a solo bedded deer near that ridge, because the access path kind of goes by where I heard that grunt, and ended up jumping a deer. I don't know what it was. I mean, I would venture a guess it was probably whatever deer was doing the grunting. Don't know how big it was or whatever, but I would tend to think that a deer that could grunt like that probably wasn't a young deer, would be my guess, or a small deer. And then went to this other ridgetop, snakeskin ridge, as we like to call it, because I got the shit scared out of me with a big rattlesnake skin that I thought was a rattlesnake the one day. Thought S-bend was coming through, had a buck show up. It was a nice buck, probably like 120 inch 8-point, good deer. Just wasn't what I'm necessarily here for. And never gave me a shot opportunity. I lost it for a second whenever I was grabbing my bow. Thought it was headed into the brush, and I wasn't sure what deer it was at that point. At that point, I still thought it was S-bend, so I grunted at it to bring it back out. But it never actually made it to the brush. It was standing at like 45 yards and never moved. I just lost it behind a tree. So then he got a little shook, or a little weird, because he was now looking for that deer that grunted at him, couldn't see it, and got a little leery. He came into 36 yards, and at that point I recognized it wasn't a deer I was going to shoot, so it wasn't a big deal necessarily. But it was exciting to be able to pull my bow off the hook finally at this particular parcel, because I've never pulled my bow off and put it in my hand.
Yeah.
anytime I've been here, and it's like this is what 4 days this trip or 4 days this trip, and 10 days a previous trip.
Yep.
So it's in 14 days I've picked up my bow once. In 14 all day hunts I've picked up my bow once.
Doesn't sound too enticing.
No,
It's miserable.
yeah, it is, but like I don't know, man. It's just the opportunity. Because Cameron, you asked us why we come here, right? Or I guess you were asking me specifically, like, why are you coming here?
Yeah.
And what I said was that I come here because this is the only place I can think of that I know of, that has been shared with me, that I can have a legitimate chance to hunt and see and potentially kill a world-class animal. Like you
On
have
public
that
ground.
on public ground. You have that opportunity at this particular spot. And if I wanted to see smaller deer, I could go any number of other places and see smaller deer or good deer or whatever. But I'm willing to go through the pain because that one time that it works, it's like, man, you'll remember it forever.
Yeah, I get it. I respect it. I'm not there in my hunting career. So like I haven't killed a bunch of 130s, 140s. I'm not after that world-class animal yet to be like, okay, I'm going to give up my November to go sit in a tree for 7 days and maybe see a deer. Like, think about that in your head. Like, I'm going to sit in November.
Doesn't make a lot of sense when you hear someone say it.
Yeah, you're picking the best days in November, right? You're like, we had a shitty weather this November, and we're like, finally, okay, you're going to get some weather breaking. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go down here and sit in a tree for 4 days, the best days that I've had so far of the year, and maybe I'll see a deer.
Yeah.
But to your guys' point, like it might be the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I had that experience with you. It's
Right.
like I hunted one day and I saw the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like, this place is something special. And like I get the appeal. I'm not there yet. And I thought maybe I was, and I came down here and I'm just not ready to give up other opportunities at bucks that I would be so happy to shoot elsewhere. And then I come down here and I'm like, all of a sudden that deer that I would shoot up north is not worthy, and I wouldn't shoot it down here. And
Right.
I don't think doesn't make sense for me.
Right.
Because you're gonna work your ass off hunting here, and you can call me lazy, you can call me weak, whatever. I have easier opportunities to kill deer,
Right.
and this was like, you're gonna work harder and most likely get shut out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like,
even when all the odds are in your favor, like you have great weather days, you have, solid data points on a couple different deer or a specific area. You have the first 2 weeks in November when all of this, when all the stars align and you're here hunting, the odds are still terrible for you.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and when you're just hunting deer, it's that way. And then when you try to kill a specific deer, it's like you might as well just buy a lottery ticket.
yeah,
I
right.
mean, the odds are that bad.
I wasn't even doing that. I was in a I guess I'll tackle
Yeah.
my hunt. So
Yeah.
I wasn't even gonna come down. You guys had it planned that you guys were coming, and I came in the winter and scouted with you guys, and another buddy of ours, Moose, came down as well. And he did some scouting on his own and hung a cell camera, and he's been sending me all these pictures of these big deer hitting this scrape, and whatever happened, he couldn't come down, and he was like, one of you guys need to go hunt this scrape, it's on fire. So I was like, all right, well, the morning I decided to come, there was a 140-inch 10-point at 6:56 in the morning, broad daylight. I'm like, all right, I'm going.
Let's go.
Yep. So it was my birthday the following day. Chad and I have the same birthday, November 11th.
I didn't realize your birthday was the 11th too. Well, damn, dude.
And
happy
your wife.
birthday. Yeah.
Yep.
That's messed up. I didn't even tell you happy birthday the other day. Now I feel like an asshole.
Yeah, it's all right.
If it makes you feel any better, I didn't tell my wife either. She had to remind me. So there's that.
But anyway, so I went. My girlfriend and I celebrated my birthday November 10th in the evening, which is the night Chad came down. I had the opportunity to either come down with Chad or wait until the following morning to come down. I was like, well, I'm going to a spot that I've never been to. I've never even driven over there, so I don't know if I'm going to know how to get there. I want to do it in the daylight. So I'll leave in the morning.
And the weather was going to be shit that morning. Like, it was going to rain.
Yeah,
all
rain.
morning.
But I was thinking, like, you're hunting a scrape. Get in there while it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, that still ended up happening. But on my way down here, there is Moose shoots me a text, and there's what could be the same buck from the day before busted off half his rack. He now was missing a main beam. And I was like, man, I'm going to be going down there. Can you share that camera with me? He shares it with me, and 10 minutes later, there's a hammer, one mid-50s 8-pointer, 9 a.m. on this scrape. And I'm like, oh, my God. I'm 2 hours away. I'm on my way down there. And I'm thinking in my head, there's no way this isn't going to happen. November 10th, 6:56, 140. November 11th, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 2 different shooters. And I'm going to be there November 11th in the evening, November 12th, November 13th in the morning. It's got to happen, right? So
tell everyone out there listening what you said your odds were when we were in the camper talking about
there was 100% chance it was going to happen. There was no way I wasn't going to shoot one of these deer. And I do that to myself to kind of psych myself up. Cody DeQuisto said it once, and it stuck with me. Is if you don't think you're going to kill every time you're in a tree, why are you even in there?
Yep.
And that's part of the reason why I'm going home tomorrow. But anyway, so I get up in there, I get set up, and the tree that I picked out was perfect. And I'm sitting in this tree for 30 minutes, and a buck walks by. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in it, man. And it was just a forky.
But whatever, it's you saw a buck first thing. I mean, that's when you show up to a place and it's the first 30 minutes, you're you see a buck in the first 30 minutes, you're
especially here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you're thinking you come down here and not see a deer for days, and I just set my saddle up and a buck walks behind me. I'm like, oh my God, 100% chance this is happening. So that evening goes by. I do see another decent buck, 100-inch buck, walks below me. I'm like, okay. So feeling good going in the next morning. My access was clean, as clean as it can be. It's so loud getting in the woods here, but it had rained the day previous and the leaves were a little bit wet. I took my time. It was about 3/4 of a mile, a little less than 3/4 of a mile, and it was I think 200 feet in elevation. So it happened quickly. The climb happened quickly, and I got up to the top. Didn't have to use a light. Got set up half an hour before legal light. Feeling good. And a couple hours go by, and a deer starts coming down the ridge top, and I'm like, here we go. This is it. And I look at it, and I was like, oh, man, it's a doe. But I'm thinking, okay, it's November 12th. There's going to be a hammer right behind her.
Has to be.
Yeah, this is 100% chance this is going to happen. Grab my bow, and I look, and I see that the deer had antlers, and I thought it was just a brow tine. I was like, oh my God, I can't even see its frame. This thing's huge.
It's so big I can't see it.
Yeah, I was like, it's so wide, the way the brush is, I can't even see it. And then it starts walking more, and I'm about to draw, and I see it's a spike. And I was like, oh my God. So it was I don't know, 40 degrees that morning. The wind was howling. I was shaking for an hour after that because I had convinced myself that I was about to shoot a giant.
Yeah.
And it was just a spike.
I love that.
Yeah. And so
I can't believe it's his brow tine. It's huge.
Yeah, I literally was like, oh, that's his brow. So it's just a spike. But that's the only deer I saw yesterday. And I was like, okay, you saw 2 deer the first time. You saw 2 bucks the first time. You saw a buck the third time. next day,
Shooter.
the big one's coming.
Yep.
Go sit in the tree, dark to dark, didn't see a deer.
Yep.
And I could take the 4th day odds for tomorrow, but the numbers got smaller, 2, 1, 0. I don't think they're going to go back up. So
Right.
I don't know what I had a lot of time to think about it, and I don't know if so all this trail camera data that we're collecting over these years. So the spot that you're hunting, there's been a trail camera there for 5 years and no one's hunted. And that trail camera data is so important and it's so crucial to us, but that's all data that is you're not intrusive on it. You're not going in, you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
You're not walking that ridge. You're not putting any pressure on that area. Not that we're putting pressure on it, but that deer is walking on that ridge November 11th on a day that there's nothing else there.
Yeah.
And then we're walking in there and it's so loud.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just because my access was loud or the way I don't know that ridge that well, and I might have been putting up deer way before I was getting to my spot. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they were on to me or I was just a day late, because there's that cycle that we talk about. There's like 4 or 5
Right.
days, and if you're a day behind the cycle, you got to wait 5 more days before them to come back. And we don't have enough intel from that space to know what it gets like, because it might be done. Like the spot that you're hunting is like November, or it was kind of like October 28th to the November 11th timeframe, and then maybe November 14th, and then it shut down until mid-December.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a deer on that camera from November 14th to December 17th.
Right.
Yep.
So that ridge could be the same way, and I don't know that. Yep. So I'm pulling out, and that was my 3 days down here. And like I was telling you guys before, being so young in my hunting career, I don't have a lot of exposure to a bunch of different hunting styles, and that's one of my goals, is to be super well-rounded and be able to get it done multiple different ways and in different areas. And I know what it takes to get it done down here, and I'm not built that way. I'm too impatient. My hunting style is way too impatient. I like to go find the sign. I want to go find the deer. I want to know where they're at. And Chad and I have talked about this before. Like, you're sitting in the tree all day and you're thinking, like, did they catch my boot track? Do they know I'm here? Are they going to ever come back? You just don't know, and you play all these games in your head. And I don't know. I'm not mentally disciplined enough to sit in that tree for another 14 hours and not see a deer.
Right.
I just feel like I'm wasting my time.
Yep.
I'm going to be driving home, and that hammer's going to be hitting the scrape. So
Probably.
Yeah.
That's
good chance of that.
But
that's
then I'll also play that through my head, and I even told myself this already. He's like, yeah, that the only day I'm not there, he hits the scrape because he knew I wasn't there.
maybe.
You know what I mean?
Or that's just
it's
his
the
pattern.
cycle. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm not willing to find out.
That's what I was saying earlier in this episode. This place is mentally exhausting.
It is.
There's early on, because I've hunted this for multiple years, but early on I would go through the same thing. I would have deer on camera. I would kind of figure out what their pattern was in that specific area, and know that they should be there around certain days. And then when I'd go in and hunt it, and not have a bad hunt, like not see a deer, it's like, okay, did they win me? Did they cut my boot track? Did I bump them on the way in? Like I'm doing something wrong. And after spending more time here, running more cameras, and just getting a better idea of how these deer work in this type of terrain and habitat, it's very possible you're doing everything right, and the deer are just two
Not
ridges
there.
over.
Yeah.
Like they're a mile away from you.
There's some guys that you've met down here that you know that are good hunters that are that run into the same thing that we've run into.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
It's not just us.
There's not
Yeah.
a single person that I know that kills deer down here consistently. Not a single person. And I know
Chrysler.
Chad Chrysler's probably the closest that it comes to it. Yeah. Yep. But he's not killing booners. I mean, but he's killing deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he keeps meticulous notes.
So when I first met him, he had, like, you and I are about the same age, so you can probably remember this, but, like, you remember, like, back in the day, like, you were probably 16, 17, like, you had a little black book, like, of girls' numbers, you know, like, that was your... Before the cell phone days.
Before cell phones, you had a black book.
Over here laughing. A little black... Well, he had a little black book of, like, 200 stand locations for this piece.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how...
Wow.
I mean, the dude gets after it pretty good.
He was down here on a broken leg the one year I was here.
Yeah. Yep.
He had a broken leg and was still trying to hike in through this shit.
Yeah,
With a
no
boot.
thank
He had
you.
a boot.
Yeah.
Walking boot.
No thanks.
Yeah.
I'm fine, and I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's definitely a hard place to hunt, but it's just, you know, look, and I'm happy to shoot, you know, I see like a good deer, like a 130-inch deer, like I'll stick it down here. Like, I'm not holding out for that, you know, that mid-170s 10 point that I've seen on camera, because I know, you know, we were just talking about it before we were recording. It's like, you know, what we were saying, there's probably 3 or 4 200-inch deer that are around here, you know, on this particular, you know, lot of however many thousands of acres are here. And there's probably 30-ish like Boone and Crockett deer that probably call this place home, you know. And it's a lot of land, you know, and when you start thinking about, okay, 30 Boone and Crockett deer over the amount of acreage that's here, that's still like not a lot, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like a lot, but when you start looking at it by like acreage and you say, well, if you divide that up by like the amount of acreage that's here, it's like, man, you're talking thousands of acres that holds a booner, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to a CO last night, and I've talked to the forester down here multiple times, and I always ask everyone the same questions, like, what is the deer density here? And no one knows, or they won't say. But I truly believe it's not more than 3 or 4 deer per square mile.
We looked the county up, and it was 2.
The county was 2?
Yeah. 2 deer per square mile.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Pretty low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you come down and check cameras, and it's like...
Well, when you do a card pull, and you pull 2 cameras, and there were 4 booners on 2 cameras, you're like, well shit. You know what I mean?
None of them are killable.
None of them are killable.
Oh,
yeah, man. It's a love-hate relationship. I mean, I'll come back to this place. It's one of those things where until I kill my deer down here, it's like I will continue to hunt this place as often as I can.
I think I'll come back too, but it'll be a while. I need to test myself in other ways before I'm willing to test myself this way again. It's just not a terrain that I'm in love with. You guys you love the hills, you like the vastness. I don't know why, but it's just like that doesn't really appeal to me as much. I think it's because the way you have to hunt it that just doesn't fit the way I want to hunt.
Yeah, it's one of those things here where it's like, you know, the moving and trying to find hot sign is like you'll walk 10 miles a day and not see shit.
Yeah,
you know,
the deer just don't leave a lot of sign.
No, I mean, that was the thing that blew me away. And I know we've talked about this before, so I won't belabor the point, but you know, when I first started coming down here, that was the thing that blew me away. It's like, you know that there's like, okay, so you have a camera and you're like, oh, there's a 150, a 160, and like a mid 170s on camera in this general area. They're all spending time around here. And there's a rub that you would find in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That like a 110-inch 8-point would make in PA.
Yeah.
And then there's like, you know, a scrape that looks like the size of like a dinner plate. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. That's only sign on the entire ridge.
Yep. And there's no deer trails. The ground's so hard and it's so full of leaves. Like,
yeah, you can't
deer
get
don't
tracks here.
Yeah, like that's one of the things that I've been really trying to hone in on is cutting a big track. And you can't do that here.
That was the nice thing about Missouri, hunting a lot of that creek bottom and around
Yeah.
water and stuff like that, man. You could find, cut some decent tracks and know that you're have a good one around or whatever. But
I think the lack of sign correlates to the low deer density. And
they just don't overlap ranges very much. So it's like there's no.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, their home ranges are so big. They travel.
And the one place there is hammer sign,
Is where they overlap.
well, is S Bend and and another big deer that we know is in an area. It's like that's the only place that there was like hammer sign that was thrown down.
And then the spot that Caesar, right?
Yep.
Where his and another deer overlapped, there was a scrape there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was back in 17.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's crazy. So it's like to come down here and just put boots on the ground and get after it. It's like you're pissing in the wind.
Yeah, you have to do that in February. And then
You have to use cameras.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's I've tried to do both. So I've tried to scout, hunt, scout, hunt, and also just pick a terrain feature and sit in a terrain feature, like pick a saddle and just sit in a saddle. And I am 100% convinced the only way to somewhat be consistent or successful down here is to run cameras, have historical data, and have a lot of time for dark to dark sits in those areas.
Yep. And a lot of mental strength.
And you better be disciplined, yeah.
Because the one day you don't show up and decide to sleep in will be the day
He's there.
that deer shows up.
Yeah.
And then you got another 7 days before it's going to happen again.
Well, the thing is, even with the trail camera stuff, just because he, like, okay, say you have that deer, like the deer in the area that Clint's hunting. He's walked in daylight on the 11th multiple years in a row. He could have been there in the 11th and not been in front of that camera. He could have been down in the drainage or on a different side of the ridge and been 200 yards from the camera, and you just never know.
Yep.
Yeah, he's just going to use that area.
Right.
We're not saying that he's going to rub the same tree every year, but
Right.
he's going to.
Well, the other thing is, too, it's interesting about this place in Cameron. You brought it up, and I thought of it last year when I was in Iowa, and this will make more sense once I get to the point I'm making, is that when we look at the trail camera data that we have for this place, there's very few does on camera. It's almost all bucks.
Yeah.
Almost always bucks, and so it's not even a place where you can classically go and say, well, I'm going to find the doe bedding area. Good luck finding a doe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In order to find a bedding area. Not only that, but like good luck finding a designated bedding area, because you will find beds in the middle of the timber.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Just anywhere.
Beds and food are everywhere here. But I think the reason why we don't see as many does on camera is just because of where we're putting the cameras.
Mm.
It could be. But even in that new cut, were there a bunch of does on camera down there?
No.
I wouldn't say a bunch. There was a handful.
You would think like a brand new clear cut, bunch of green vegetation.
Yeah.
A lot of security.
Well, not just that, but it's like think about just even what you see from the stand. Or what you see from
typically.
I've
bucks.
never seen it
Yeah.
now. Yeah,
typically bucks.
I've not either. I've seen 4 deer here in my life, and they've all been bucks.
Yeah.
Think about that. 14 hunts. You've seen 4 deer,
Mm-hmm.
and they've all been bucks.
All bucks.
I've had 14 hunts down here this year. 14 days.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's just it's different. I do get the appeal. Like I said, it's a grind to the fullest extent.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, it is like a place that you just have never.
Well, the vertical, I mean, like the ridges aren't like these slow sloping ridges. It's like I was just curious today whenever I went to an easy place. Like I shouldn't say easy place, but I went to an easier place to walk into relative to where I was walking into previously. And it was still, from where I was set up, it was only like about a half mile from like the truck. Most of it was ridge top, but there was 100 150-foot elevation change in a very short period of time, coming from that flat spot where I was set up to that ridge top to walk out. Then there was another 100-foot of elevation change in the last probably like 75 yards to get to the top, to get to the road to the truck.
It happens in a hurry.
So it's like, it was probably 250 feet of elevation change that I was going to make in over a half mile. People might be listening and say, well, that's not that bad. It's like, well, take into account you're walking through greenbriers, you're walking through leaves in some places like up to your knees because they've all kind of pulled into a spot. You're walking over a deadfall. It's like, I joked at one point the last time I hunted this place that I was glad that I did a Western hunt before I came here. I went to Montana, did an elk hunt because I was actually in shape and ready to hunt this place. Because
you have to be in shape.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's like the other place I was hunting the past couple of days was 0.8 of a mile down an old logging road that's all completely grown up. And that was just to get to the timber, to the spot that I wanted to walk into. And then it was another 500 and some odd, almost 600 yards.
Straight down.
Straight down.
Yeah. That's a brutal climb on the way out.
Yeah. And that's all like you're walking down a drainage that's full of leaves and hard ass, like, and rocks, and the ground's so hard that the rocks don't like stick in the ground, like they roll. So you're constantly slipping.
Yep.
So it was like 1.33 miles each way, or 1 3/10 miles probably each way, roughly.
I fell twice this week and slid down the hill.
I fell once after it rained.
Yeah.
Coming down, it was slippery.
That was actually the only time I had any grip in that drainage. Was like after it had a little bit of like moisture to where like the rocks wouldn't slip on like the dry dirt on the top. But yeah, I mean that's a typical hike in and hike out.
Yeah. I mean, I was fairly 3/4 of a mile, like not that far.
I probably have the shortest walk out of the three of us.
Probably, yeah.
It's 0.6 of a mile.
Yeah, I think mine was like 0.7, like
Yeah.
somewhere in between. And it was on a bridle trail, so it wasn't anything like I'm going over deadfalls or anything, but it is just straight up.
Yeah.
There's nothing to grip on. There's like just all leaves, wet leaves. And like you're saying, like rocks that you're just like catching yourself going up. And I was trying to pay attention to how loud I was being going in this morning, and even just my breathing, because I'm not in shape. And I'm like, man, if a deer did run away, I wouldn't hear it over myself.
Right. The one thing I was thinking the other day when I hunted that ground setup is I was like, if you were going to hunt this place, like, and go find sign and try to set up and hunt it that way, like, you would almost have to do it hunting from the ground, I feel like. And then you would have very limited shot opportunities because you do, like, we all hunt with pretty light systems with like saddle systems and stuff like that. And even with that limited system of like carrying 2 sticks of saddle in my pack to have like some insulation layers or whatever, like, good luck trying to walk all day with that shit.
We did it to hang your stands, and that was like awful.
So in 2017, I was still, the first year I was down here, I was using saddle, which that was in 15 and 16, we used saddles and stands. But in 17, I got rid of that saddle and just used just 100% mobile. Like, I didn't have any pre-hung set, or maybe I did have some pre-hung sets, but I don't think I hunted out of them. And I was packing around a camera and a camera arm plus a pack. And after that year, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, never again. I'm losing
It's
the
like
camera
going
gear,
to
losing the
Colorado
stand.
and packing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. It's, because even whenever when I hunted that saddle over by that new cut, and then went to check all those cameras, that was only like a 1.5 mile loop, I think, something like that.
That's about right.
To
It's
check
not
those
too bad,
cameras.
yeah.
And but I had like my pack on with my 2 sticks, my platform, light gear. But after doing that 1.5 mile loop, I was like, man, I do not want to do that again. With
Those
like,
logging roads get steep. When
Oh,
you
yeah.
left,
Over in that cut is,
you left that
yeah.
B stick over there.
yeah.
I was like, I'm not even going back with you. I'm gonna sit on top of this hill.
Oh yeah, that new cut, those logging, dude, those
That's-
are brutal.
Yeah.
Those are like, we used to have some of those back in Pennsylvania when I was a kid. That we used to ride dirt bikes up over to do hill climbs.
Yeah.
And jump the breakers.
Yeah.
It's like that's what we used to, that's what we would use those for, because we had some of those like around my house, and it's just, it's a love-hate relationship with this place, man. I'll continue to come back and hunt it until I get my deer from here. Yeah, I can't say that I will hunt it after that. It might be, or at least I'll take a break from it for a while. But I do like this type of hunting. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Cameron, you were saying that this, that Chad and I both kind of like this, and I think you were saying you're not quite sure why, that we like the vastness or whatever. For me, I think it's just because where I hunt typically in and around like Philadelphia and stuff like that, that the parcels are all so small typically.
Yeah.
That I don't have a lot of room to roam. When I get to a place like this, or like, some of the places we were at in Missouri, that were bigger than what I get at home, I just want to be able to have that space to go explore.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to. To be able to go, even though I know I should be sitting in a spot for several days, if the camera intel has it or tells me that I should, even just having the ability to say, I just want to get up and I want to go somewhere else, and because of how hard it is to hunt, you typically don't get a lot of pressure. So it's like, I'm not picking spots based on whether or not there's someone else going to already be there or someone else going to be close. It's like, I'm able to pick spots based on whether or not I think the deer are going to be there or not.
Yeah, it gives you an appreciation for being feeling alone, feeling like you're in the wild. It kind of gives you more of like, okay, this is hunting.
Yeah.
But it I was thinking about that too, and I'm like, okay, yes, I could go roam however many thousands of acres are here, but I don't want to, because it's so hard to do. And I know that if I leave here, the chances of finding another spot like the one I'm hunting are so few and far between that like the ability to roam is there, but I don't want. It doesn't make any sense to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Like I would rather go to a big piece of public that had a bunch of deer, or there was a bunch of sign and the terrain wasn't so hard to navigate. Like I enjoy vastness,
right,
and I enjoy large tracts of land, but this being a large tract of land means nothing to me because I'm sitting in one spot for 7 days.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. All right. Was there anything else to add, fellas, or did we sufficiently cover?
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much the takeaway is that this place is really hard to hunt.
Yep.
You probably never want to come here. And one day you might see a big deer here if you were here.
I will say, if you ever get to a point where you think deer hunting's easy and you're losing the challenge, come here. And you
call one of us.
Yeah. You'll
we might tell you where it's at.
You'll quickly realize that what you are going through isn't so bad.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you boys are pulling out tomorrow, but I'm sticking around.
Yeah.
Put myself through some more misery.
And for good reason, man.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of history with a specific animal that is that's got your name all over it, man. I hope you arrow him for sure.
Well, the odds are saying probably not, but the odds would be 0 if I went home. So
yeah, exactly. Well, that, and I mean, the data says he's going to be around on the 15th, right? That's typically when he's
14th and 15th.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's 14th.
Yeah. So those 2 days are the day, or the days rather. But cool. With that, I think we'll go ahead and shut this thing down. I hope everyone's rut has gone well. When you're listening to this, we'll be on the backside of the rut. Still awesome hunting in front of us, especially that Thanksgiving time frame, which I've tried to capitalize on the past couple years. I might be making one more trip around that time for a quick jaunt out after Thanksgiving dinner for a couple of days. Might pack up the camper and head out again one more time for a couple day trip. See if I can't fill an out-of-state tag before I call my out-of-state season a close, and then we'll switch our focus to Pennsylvania and try to fill a tag there. But right now I'm 0 for 3, so it's the bottom of the ninth. So we got to make some magic happen. With that, we're going to shut her down. Thanks for listening. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tether, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, and Maven Optics. And until next time, we'll see y'all.